We're going to do a review of adding and subtracting of fractions. And this is going to be helpful because we're going to go through and we're going to look at different types of probability and so forth. But we want to make sure that we understand how to both add and subtract fractions. So as we're going through, we notice here that we've got two sets of fractions. We're going to work with the one that's on the left here. We have 1/2 plus 5 over 6. Okay, so remember, fractions always represent a part of a whole. But when we're adding fractions, we have to make sure that the denominators, the numbers on the bottom, have to equal the same thing. Okay, and so they have to either both be 2, or they both have to be 6, or they have to be some version of each other. Okay, and in this case, we know that 2 goes into 6 3 times. Okay, so in order to add these two fractions together, I actually have to uh, multiply 1/2 by 3, both the top piece and the bottom half, in order to get the bottom numbers of both of these things to be 6. So I know I've got 5 over 6, okay, on the one side, and I want this 1/2 to have a denominator of 6. So the only way I can get 2 to be 6 is to multiply it by 3. Okay, and so if I do that, I know that I'm going to have 3 times 2, and that's going to equal 6. But if I do something to the bottom number, I also need to do it to the top number. So if I multiplied the bottom number by 3, then I also have to multiply the top number by 3 as well. So 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, and so now I can go through and I can actually add these things together. Okay, and when you're adding, you only add the top numbers together. So 3 plus 5. So 3 plus 5 is 8, and the 6 stays the same on the bottom. Okay, so I now want to convert this into lowest terms. So both 8 and 6 are even numbers. That means I can divide both of them by 2. Okay, so I'm going to divide both of these numbers by 2. That's going to leave me with 4 over 3. Okay, so 4 over 3 is going to be my final answer. When you're subtracting, you do the same thing. You can only add or subtract fractions if the bottom numbers are the same for both fractions, or for all the fractions involved. And so what we see here on the right-hand side, we've got 3 over 4 minus 7 over 6. Okay, and we'll notice that this one isn't just necessarily a simple, add one to the other. We want to figure out, well, what numbers are common to both 4 and 6. And so numbers that are both common to 4 and 6, well, if you multiply those two numbers together, you get a common number, which happens to be 24. Or you could just, you know that 4 goes into 12 3 times, and 6 goes into 12 as well, and it goes in 2 times. So what we can do is we know that there's a common base. In this case, we'll use our common base as 12. Okay, so 12 is going to be our common base. So in order to get 4 to be 12, we have to multiply it by 3. Okay, and if we multiplied 4 by 3, then we also have to multiply the 3 on the top by 3 as well. Okay, so 3 times 3 is 9. And on the other fraction that's involved, we have 6, which became a 12. And 6 became 12, okay, by multiplying that by 2. And if we multiply the 6 by 2, we also have to multiply the 7 by 2 as well. So 7 times 2 gives us 14. Okay, so now we have fractions that have common denominators. They have the same number on the bottom. So now, just like we did with adding, you only add or subtract the top numbers and you keep the bottom number the same. So I know that 9 minus 14 is actually going to give me negative 5. Okay, so negative 5 is going to be my top number. I cannot divide negative 5 by any number that is also divisible by 12 other than 1. So that is written as a fraction in lowest terms.